The hotel manager didn't even look up when she walked in. He was standing behind the concierge desk, scrolling through something on his tablet, and when the glass doors slid open and let in a gust of February cold, along with a young black woman in a puffy orange jacket and worn sneakers carrying a plastic bag from a drugstore, he gave her exactly the kind of glance people give to things they've already decided don't belong. 2 seconds, then back to his screen. She walked to the front desk anyway. The front desk clerk, a young woman named Brittany with a headset and a practiced smile, looked up. The smile arrived right on schedule. Then her eyes did what eyes in hotel lobbies tend to do. A quick read. Jacket, sneakers, the drugstore bag, natural hair pulled back with a yellow scrunchie, no luggage. The smile stayed, but it thinned. "Welcome to the Harlow Grand. Do you have a reservation?" "I'm here to meet with your general manager, Gerald Sutton. He's expecting me." Brittany typed something, frowned at her screen. "Can I get your name?" "Zoe Harmon." More typing. A pause that lasted slightly too long. "I'm not seeing anything on his calendar under that name. Are you sure it's today?" "I'm sure. Let me just call up to his office." "Would you mind having a seat?" Zoe didn't sit. She stepped to the side, stood near the marble column at the edge of the lobby, and watched the room move. And that's when the hotel manager noticed her standing there and decided, for reasons he would spend the rest of his career trying to explain, to make it his problem. His name was Conrad Fitch. 47, white, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who had worn a lanyard with authority for so long that the lanyard had become the authority. 15 years at the Harlow Grand. Assistant manager for 9 of them. He walked the lobby every morning like a landowner inspecting his property, which in a certain sense he believed he was. He crossed the lobby floor with his hands clasped behind his back and stopped 2 feet from Zoe Harmon. "Can I help you?" His voice was not unkind. It was the voice of a man who had perfected the art of being dismissive in a way that couldn't quite be quoted back at him. Zoe looked at him. "I'm waiting for someone. Are you a guest with us?" "Not at the moment." Conrad's eyes moved to the plastic bag, back to her face. "This lobby is for registered guests and invited visitors. If you're not staying with us, I'll need you to wait in the front vestibule or come back when whoever you're meeting is available to escort you in." Zoe looked at him for a long moment. Her expression didn't change. "The receptionist is calling upstairs right now." "Even so," he gestured toward the glass vestibule. "Our policy." "I'm fine here." Something shifted behind Conrad Fitch's eyes. Not anger, not yet. Something quieter and more practiced. The controlled irritation of a man whose requests are not usually questioned. "Miss, I'm not asking." Zoe met his gaze, held it. "I know you're not." She didn't move. Conrad straightened. He was 6 feet tall and he used all of it. "I'm going to have to ask you to step outside, or I'll need to involve security. For standing in a hotel lobby. For refusing a reasonable request from management." Zoe tilted her head. Just slightly. "Okay." She still didn't move. Let me tell you who Zoe Harmon actually was, because Conrad Fitch had absolutely no idea, and that gap between what he assumed and what was true is the entire story. Zoe Harmon was 29 years old. She had grown up in Decatur, Georgia, in a 3-bedroom house with her grandmother after her parents separated when she was 7. Her grandmother, a woman named Dolores, who pressed her church clothes every Sunday and kept a garden the neighbors talked about for years, used to say, "The quietest people in the room are usually the ones who've already won." Zoe had carried that with her like a coin in her pocket. She graduated high school a year early, got a full scholarship to Georgia Tech, finished her computer science degree in 3 years, and went directly into a master's program in hospitality technology at Cornell, because she had a specific idea she couldn't stop thinking about. An idea about the way hotels managed their booking infrastructure, the way they hemorrhaged money through outdated software and fragmented systems that never talked to each other. The way a billion-dollar industry was running on technology that belonged in 2004. She built a prototype her second year of graduate school, a platform called ClearKey. By the time she finished her thesis, She had 3 potential investors. By the time she was 25, Clearkey had been adopted by 42 mid-size hotel properties across the Southeast. By 27, it was in 230 hotels across 11 states. By last year, a private equity firm had valued the company at just under $90 million. That morning, at 7:45 a.m., Zoe Harmon had signed an agreement to acquire a controlling stake in the Harlow Grand Hotel Group, all 7 properties, including this one. The flagship on Fifth Avenue with the marble lobby and the 20-foot ceilings and the brass fixtures that caught the light like something out of a movie set. She had signed the papers at her kitchen table in a Cornell sweatshirt with a cup of tea and her cat asleep on the couch. Then she had changed into what she felt like wearing, grabbed her drugstore bag because she needed chapstick and had forgotten to buy it yesterday, and taken the subway instead of a car because she liked the subway and she had nothing to prove to anybody. Gerald Sutton, the outgoing general manager, was expecting her at 9 a.m. for a private walkthrough before the formal announcement. It was 8:43. Zoe had been standing in the lobby for 4 minutes when Conrad Fitch decided she was a problem to be solved. He turned to the lobby now and raised his hand, a small gesture, controlled like a man directing traffic. Their head of security, a thick-necked man named Paul, who stationed himself near the elevator bank, started walking over. Zoe watched him come. She had seen this before. Different lobbies, different cities, same walk, the walk of a man who has been given permission to do something he was going to enjoy. Paul stopped beside Conrad and crossed his arms. Problem? Non-guest refusing to comply with lobby policy. Conrad's voice was pleasant. Professionally pleasant, the way a scalpel is clean. Paul looked at Zoe. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step outside. I'm waiting for Gerald Sutton. The receptionist is confirming my appointment. That's fine. You can wait outside. I'm fine here. Paul uncrossed his arms. Ma'am, don't. Zoe's voice was quiet, not sharp. Just quiet in a way that made both men pause. I know what you've been told to do. I know why. I'm asking you to think about it for 1 second before you do it. Paul blinked. Something crossed his face. He had kids. 2 daughters, one of them about this age. He pushed the thought away. Conrad stepped forward. This isn't a debate. If you won't leave voluntarily, we'll need to escort you out and contact law enforcement. For standing in a hotel lobby, for trespassing. Zoe looked at him for a long moment. Your name is Conrad Fitch, she said quietly. You've been assistant manager here for 9 years. Before that, you were at the Meridian on Park. Before that, the Stratton downtown. Conrad's expression shifted. How do you? I did my homework. She looked at Paul. Your name is Paul Decker. You've been head of security here for 6 years. You have a clean record. No complaints on file. She paused. Yet. Both men stared at her. I'm going to give you both 30 seconds, Zoe said, to decide whether you want to keep doing what you're doing. Conrad recovered first, the way people do when they're embarrassed and don't have another move besides aggression. I don't know who you think you are, he said, but this is private property and I have every right. Conrad. The voice came from across the lobby. Every head turned. Gerald Sutton was 58, silver-haired, built like a man who had spent 40 years in the hospitality industry and intended to spend 40 more. He was crossing the marble floor with the kind of brisk, purposeful stride that people use when they are both very late and very alarmed. He went straight to Zoe. Mrs. Harmon. His voice was warm, immediate, a little breathless. I am so sorry. The elevator took forever. I should have come down sooner. He shook her hand with both of his. Then he turned to look at the coffee stain spreading across the marble. Except there was no coffee stain here. There was something almost worse. The spectacle of 2 men looming over a 29-year-old woman with a drugstore bag, and the rest of the lobby watching from behind menus and laptops and the rims of coffee cups. Gerald looked at Conrad, just looked at him. Conrad's neck went red. Gerald. He started. She wasn't. There was no Ms. Harmon, Gerald said, turning away from Conrad entirely, which was its own kind of answer. Shall we? Zoe picked up her plastic bag. She looked at Conrad Fitch one more time, the way you look at something you've decided what to do about. "We'll talk later," she said. It was not a threat, it was a date on a calendar. Then she walked with Gerald Sutton toward the elevator, and the lobby watched her go. Here's what Conrad Fitch was thinking in those first 60 seconds after the elevator closed. That there had been a mistake, that someone had gotten confused about the org chart, that this young woman in the orange jacket was some kind of administrative liaison or low-level associate being walked in on a courtesy visit, that Ms. Harmon was a title Gerald used for everybody, that there was still, somehow, a version of this morning where Conrad came out okay. He was wrong about all of it. Let me take you back to the night before. Because the thing about Zoe Harmon is that she had known exactly what she wanted to do from the moment the acquisition closed. She had spent the previous 6 months doing due diligence on the Harlow Grand Hotel group. Not just the financials, not just the property valuations and occupancy rates and brand positioning reports. She had read every internal review, every employee satisfaction survey, every HR complaint ever filed against every property. What she found at the flagship on Fifth Avenue had made her quiet in the way she got quiet when something mattered. Conrad Fitch, 7 complaints on record. Not formal ones. Most of them. The kind that get written on a form and filed in a drawer and never followed up on. But 7 of them, spanning 5 years, all with a similar shape. A guest of color being questioned, redirected, asked to prove their reason for being in a space that required no proof. A black business traveler asked 3 times to show his room key while white guests in the same lobby were waved through without a word. A South Asian woman asked to verify her reservation at the front desk even though she had already checked in. A Latino family sitting in the lounge asked if they were guests, then asked again, then a 3rd time by Conrad himself when they didn't respond with sufficient deference the first 7 times. 5 years, the same pattern. And every single complaint had been closed with the same 3 words stamped in red. No further action. Zoe had read everyone. She had also done something else. She had asked her assistant to book her in as an unnamed guest for 2 visits to the flagship over the previous month, under a name that couldn't be traced back to her. She had walked through the lobby herself in 2 different outfits, the first time in a blazer and slacks, wheeling a carry-on. The second time in jeans and sneakers with a canvas bag. The first visit, she had been greeted at the door by a bellman, offered a coffee at the front desk, called ma'am with a warmth that felt rehearsed but genuine. The second visit, she had stood in the lobby for 7 minutes before anyone spoke to her. The person who finally spoke to her had been Conrad Fitch. He had asked if she was looking for someone. She had told him she was meeting a friend who was a guest. He had asked her to wait near the entrance. She had thanked him and done exactly that, standing with her canvas bag near the glass doors for 11 minutes, while other people walked freely past her, unchallenged, unquestioned, belonging. She had not said a word. She had simply stood there, watched, and filed everything away. This morning was not an accident. This morning was an answer. Up in the general manager's office on the 14th floor, the conversation between Zoe Harmon and Gerald Sutton lasted 2 hours. It covered the transition timeline, the leadership structure, the operational priorities she intended to focus on in the first 90 days. Conrad's file came up at the 58-minute mark. Gerald put his hands flat on the table and didn't move them. "I want to be honest with you. I've known about the complaints. I should have acted sooner." "You should have," Zoe said. "Not unkindly, just accurately. What do you want to do?" Zoe opened the folder in front of her. The 7 complaints, printed out, paper-clipped, culpard with color-coded tat. She set it on the table between them. "I want an independent review of every complaint in that file and every complaint filed against any manager at any Harlow property in the past 5 years. I want it led by someone external, not internal HR." She paused. "I want every complainant contacted directly with an apology and a determination of appropriate remediation, not a form letter, a phone call." Gerald nodded. and I want Conrad Fitch placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the review, effective today." Gerald nodded again without hesitation. Zoe closed the folder. "I'm also going to need you to stay on through the transition. You know this property. I need that knowledge." She looked at him. "Can you do that?" Gerald Sutton looked at this 29-year-old woman sitting across from him with a Cornell sweatshirt under her orange jacket and a chapstick she'd just pulled from a drugstore bag and set on the corner of his desk, and he felt something he hadn't expected to feel. Relief. "Yes," he said. "I can do that." Conrad found out at 2:15 that afternoon. He was in the staff break room when Paul Decker came in and told him HR needed to see him. He walked into that meeting with his hands loose at his sides and his chin up, still carrying, somewhere behind his eyes, the belief that this was a misunderstanding, that there was a conversation to be had. That 15 years of dedication to this property meant something. The HR director, a woman named Charlotte, who had seen 100 of these meetings and knew exactly how they went, placed a folder on the table in front of him. He looked at the 7 complaints, his own name at the top of each one, the red stamp, "No further action," and beneath it a new stamp, black this time, "Reopened," under external review. Conrad Fitch, for the first time in a long time, had nothing to say. The announcement came the following Monday. An internal memo distributed to all 7 Harlow properties simultaneously, followed by a press release. Zoe Harmon named as the new controlling owner and CEO of the Harlow Grand Hotel Group. A brief biography. A photograph, a candid one she had chosen herself, taken at a coding conference 2 years ago, in a hoodie, laughing at something off camera. The story moved fast. The hospitality trade press picked it up first. Then the business pages. Then, because someone somewhere found out what had happened in the lobby that Sunday morning and put it together with the acquisition announcement, the story stopped being about business and became about something else. A former bellman at the flagship posted about it on his personal account. He had been there. He had watched the whole thing. He described Conrad standing over a young black woman and telling her to leave. He described Gerald Sutton coming off the elevator. He described the look on Conrad's face when he understood what he had done. The Post got 11,000 shares in 4 hours. By Tuesday morning, the story was everywhere. Zoe did one interview, a single 15-minute conversation with a journalist she trusted. She was measured, careful, specific. She talked about the complaints she had found in the file. She talked about her own 2 visits to the lobby and what had been different between them. She talked about what she intended to build. She did not perform outrage. She did not cry. She did not use language designed to go viral. She just told the truth, in order, without decoration. That was enough. The external review took 6 weeks. What it found extended far beyond Conrad Fitch, though Conrad's file was the thickest. The review identified a pattern of selective enforcement of lobby and lounge policies across 3 of the 7 Harlow properties. The pattern had a shape. It was not random. 2 additional managers were placed on administrative leave. One was terminated with cause. Conrad's review concluded that his conduct constituted a violation of both company policy and applicable civil rights standards. He was terminated. He forfeited the bonus structure he had been anticipating. The severance he believed he was entitled to became the subject of a legal dispute that his own attorney eventually advised him not to pursue. He was 57 years old with 15 years at one company on his resume, and above the fold on the first page of Google results for his name was a post with 11,000 shares describing exactly what he had done on a Sunday morning in February to a 29-year-old woman in an orange jacket. The 7 original complainants each received a personal call. 4 of them also received written apologies signed by Zoe herself. 3 accepted invitations to a listening session she held at the flagship, where she sat in a conference room with no cameras and no press and just listened for 2 hours. She took notes by hand. In the months that followed, the changes at the Harlow Grand were visible in ways that mattered. New training. Not a one-time module, but a quarterly requirement. external facilitators, specific scenarios, actual practice. A revised lobby policy, written plainly, posted internally, no ambiguity about what constituted a reason to approach a visitor. An anonymous reporting system with a direct line to an external ombudsman, bypassing internal management entirely. Zoe promoted Paul Decker, not as a reward. She had seen something in the moment he paused, when he'd told her to think about it for 1 second before doing what he was told. She thought he might be able to lead differently than he had been led. She was right. She also hired a new head of people operations, a woman who had spent 12 years working in civil rights litigation and 3 more consulting for hospitality companies trying to actually change, not just appear to change. Her first act was announcing that every Harlow property would conduct a full audit of its complaint history going back a decade. On a Thursday afternoon in early April, Zoe walked through the flagship lobby alone. The light through the tall windows was the pale gold of almost spring. Brittany was at the front desk and looked up with a smile when she heard the doors. A real one, eyes included. Paul was at his station near the elevator bank. He nodded when he saw her. She nodded back. Near the entrance, a young man was standing with a backpack, clearly waiting for someone, clearly uncertain whether he was allowed to just stand there. Nobody asked him to leave. Nobody looked at him twice. Zoe stopped at the concierge desk and asked for a coffee. The concierge brought it over and set it down with a small ceramic sugar dish and a spoon. Zoe sat at the window for 20 minutes and drank it slowly, looking out at the street, at the people moving past, at the city doing what cities do, indifferent and alive. Then she went upstairs to work. The chapstick from the drugstore bag was in her jacket pocket. Her phone had 43 unread emails. Her calendar had 6 calls scheduled before 5 o'clock. Somewhere in a conference room on the 12th floor, a team of people was rebuilding something that had needed rebuilding for a long time. She thought about her grandmother's garden, about the neighbors who used to stop and stare at it, about what it looked like in August, full and loud with color, nothing wasted, everything in its place. The quietest people in the room are usually the ones who've already won. She opened her laptop and got to work. Now let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself. When you picture someone walking into a luxury hotel to take over as the new owner, what do you see? Be specific. What do they look like? What are they wearing? How old are they? What does the bag in their hand look like? Because that picture, the one that forms without you choosing it, that's the thing Conrad Fitch acted on. The assumption so automatic he never even checked it. The image of who belongs somewhere, running on loop in the background, so familiar it feels like common sense, instead of what it actually is. Zoe Harmon didn't win because she had $90 million. She didn't win because she had leverage and legal counsel and a press strategy. She won because she walked in knowing exactly who she was, and she stood there, quietly, and waited for the truth to do what the truth does when you give it enough room. She didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to explain herself to Conrad Fitch. She didn't need his permission to exist in a room she already owned. That's the part that stays with me. If this story hit you somewhere, drop it in the comments. What would you have done if you were Paul, standing there with a choice? I want to know. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And subscribe to Dale Stories, because there are more stories like this one, and they deserve to be told. Remember this. The way someone treats you when they think you have nothing to offer them, that's the only honest thing they'll ever show you. Everything else is performance.